This podcast is brought to you by Most Valuable Podcasts, leading the league in podcasting entertainment.
What's going on, Real MVPs? Welcome inside another episode of What's Your Fantasy, Week 14 in the NFL. We've had a little bit of trouble the last couple of weeks going back and forth on what week it is, but we are definitely spot on this week. It's going to be Week 14 in the NFL. Brandon Swanson alongside Ricky Widmer.
What's up, guys?
And before we get started, of course, the usuals. If you want to support this podcast or just MVP in general, head over to patreon.com, become a patron for just $1 a month, or to come on a podcast once a month, $10 a month, and you can do that and talk fantasy football with Ricky and I, be able to talk NBA with Ricky, Dave, and Sean, be able to be on so many different podcasts. So if that's something you want to do, head over to patreon.com, head over to mostvaluablepodcast.com, and get an MVP t-shirt where Dave Oster is displaying those, and Dave Oster was just in and out of the studio here. He was doing the onside kick with Ricky tonight, so got to see the male model himself and talk with him for the first time in a while, which was great.
You had to see him in person, see if he's keeping up that physique.
Oh, yeah. Physique was good. Mostvaluablepodcast.com again. Head over there. And finally, if you want to give us that 5-star rating, head over to iTunes and do that. So now that all that is out of the way, Ricky, how do we do?
Really good week this week. And first off, I got to say, Jake, I know you've been talking about us, brother. I know you've been talking about us because Sean has told me that you've been talking about us. Apparently, Jake is very salty that we were able to get Saquon Barkley for next to nothing.
I would be too, but I would be too. Come on.
Because apparently we're impossible to beat, which, like, of course, we're the best team in the league. 132.5 to Jake's 102.4. So we're going into week number 2 of our first round matchup, kind of like this. If I had to map it out, we're sitting like this, Brandon. Feet up, hands back. We got a Mai Tai over here because it looks like we are going to be going to the second round. I know that we got another week to play. I know by me saying that Jake's team's just going to have a baller week and we're going to get blown out now because I said that. But 30-point hole for Jake to climb out of going into week 2, I'm feeling good about our chances with Todd Gurley and Saquon, as long as they stay healthy.
You know what the biggest takeaway I took from that is, why does everyone, and I do it myself, why does everyone say sitting here with a Mai Tai? Has anyone actually had a Mai Tai?
It's just a fancy.
Does anyone know
I'm not a
what's
drinker.
in a Mai Tai?
Let's see.
I mean, truly, I know that this is the least important thing that we'll probably talk about, and you'll probably hear all podcasts. But what is a Mai Tai and what's in it?
Let's see. So a Mai Tai is 2 flavors of rum combined with pineapple juice and orange juice to make a yummy, fruity drink. Here's the ingredients. So 1 jigger of spiced rum, 3 fluid ounces of pineapple juice, half a jigger of coconut-flavored rum, 1 teaspoon of grenadine syrup. I'm not a bartender. 2 fluid ounces of orange juice and 1 cup of ice cubes. That's a Mai Tai. I've never had a Mai Tai.
I, too, have never had a Mai Tai. Maybe one day I will, but the coconut, not the coconut.
Well, it's a coconut rum. It's more of the pineapple orange juice coming together. And I'm fine with pineapple, just as long as it's not on my pizza.
Ricky, let me tell you, freshman year was a bad year with coconut rum. So there's no more coconut rum going in Brandon's belly, let me tell you that.
Sick bad, or don't remember the next, don't remember the night after?
Oh, bad. No. Sick bad. And I remembered the night before.
Wow.
It's a double whammy. So on to what we actually want to talk about today. It's not just Mai Tais, but you're in now. You're in the thick of your fantasy football playoffs, and you are needing your stud guys to step up and play well. This is when they need to be at their very best.
They better be at their very best.
And 2 players that have not currently been at their very best, unfortunately happen to be on the same team in the NFC, New Orleans Saints, Alvin Kamara, Mark Ingram. Two guys who, when they're on, they're on. But they have not been on lately. They have been struggling. It's been difficult to get things going for them. And then it's kind of this one of these, well, which one's going to have the better game? Which one's going to go off? And sometimes, and a lot of times this season, it's been Kamara. Couple times it's been Ingram. But lately it's been both of them really not doing a whole lot. You can look back to the Atlanta game, and you can certainly look most recently to the game against the Dallas Cowboys last Thursday night. Well, so, Ricky, if you're owning one of these players and you're in this type of predicament, you almost have to roll with them, though, at this point, don't you?
It depends on what kind of a league I'm in. If I'm in a PPR league, I'm fine with Alvin Kamara right now because Alvin Kamara is the exact reason why I hate PPR leagues. And the reason why I say that is this last week, for example, he had 15 points. 8 of his points was because he had 8 receptions. Only had 36 yards on those receptions. Only had 36 rushing yards. 8 of his points were because he had 8 receptions. Like, and I know Sean has him in our MVP league. And if you look at it, the last 2 weeks, non-PPR, 8 points and 6 points. So if you're in a PPR, Alvin Kamara, you're sitting there going, all right, 17, 10, 15. I'm not hitting the panic button. For us, since we got Mark Ingram, I'm hitting the panic button a little bit because against Cincy, 25 points. There you go, Mark. There you go. Then you got the Philly game. 100 yards, 2 touchdowns. There you go. Another 20-point performance for us. Then ever since, 8 points, 4 points. To where it's like this week, you look at like the projected totals that they give each player. They gave Mark Ingram 11. And I know they're going up against Tampa Bay, but I looked at that and went, yeah, in what world? Unless you're just hoping, yeah, the Saints are just going to blow out the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to where by the end of the game, it's just going to be this. It's just going to be Drew Brees handing the ball off to Mark Ingram because they're trying to rest Alvin Kamara by the end of the game. But, like, I look at it, and I think these two guys are very hit or miss at the wrong time of the season to where if I've got them in non-PPR, I might not be starting them. If I have Mark Ingram in PPR, I might not be starting him. That's the conundrum you're in.
You know what? It is. It definitely is, but I think that when you're looking at the matchup, and especially if you're talking about a matchup with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, what just happened to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers? They got gashed on the ground. Only 10 carries for Christian McCaffrey this past week, but 106 yards on the ground. Cam added 33 yards. DJ Moore had 21. Curtis Samuel, a carry for 8. I think that the duo of Alvin Kamara and Mark Ingram is going to be even more potent, so they could be even better on the ground. Tampa Bay has really struggled on their rushing rush defense this season, especially. I mean, their entire defense has struggled at times this year, but their rush defense especially. So that's where I look at the matchup here. The matchup could be where they thrive, but it then goes to which one is going to take over as the lead guy. Many times when Ingram came back, I thought they'd use him the same way they did last year, especially when he was inside when they were at the goal line inside the 5. They'd go Ingram. They'd go Ingram. That has not been the case so much this year. They've gone Kamara a lot, Ingram a little. So that's the biggest thing. I think they both could have good success this week because of the matchup, but I don't know which one will have the better game.
So I got 2 questions for you.
Sure.
And this is both for our team. One plays into this topic. The other one doesn't, and I'm just going to ask you now before I forget. Our flex spot, because we've got Mark Ingram. I'm going to give you 4 players. You pick who you want us to start this weekend in our flex spot. Right now we have DJ Moore in, going up against Cleveland. He's projected about 12 points. Mark Ingram, going up against Tampa Bay, projected about almost 14 points. Calvin Ridley going against the Packers, projected 11 points, or Austin Eckler going up against Cincy, projected about 18, 19 points.
Okay, I'm going to
say...
Who
would you start?
I'm going to say Eckler, no. Ridley, Ingram, and who was the first one?
DJ Moore.
I'd say Ingram.
Really?
I would say either Ingram or Ridley.
Who would you put your money on? Because I'm going to put them in right now. I don't forget about it.
I would go Ingram because of the matchup.
The second one I'm going to ask you, and this has nothing to do with these running backs, but I have to ask you anyways. Aaron Rodgers or Dak Prescott? Aaron Rodgers is projected about 20, 21 points this week against Atlanta. Dak Prescott, 18 against Philly.
I'm going to go.
Dak had 21 the last time they played Philly. Aaron Rodgers had 15 points this past week against Arizona.
I like the Cowboys more right now. I think I'll probably go Dak.
Okay.
But even with that said, is Aaron Rodgers now free to go? Does he have free reign on that offense now where maybe he didn't before? They're going against a Falcons team that is getting a little healthier on defense, but could he be able to pick them apart? I still am one where Devontae Adams is the only guy that Aaron Rodgers even looks to, and that can't be the case the entire game. There's really no one else who's going to help him out. So I am going to say stick with Dak.
And going in this as well, going back to Mark Ingram, so not just do we have him on the What's Your Fantasy team, I also have him on my personal team. And like this week, I'm in a conundrum because if Melvin Gordon comes back from injury, Melvin Gordon's in my starting lineup, but he's questionable and still projected 0. So that's telling me he's probably not going to play. The conundrum I am in, do I keep Gus Edwards in my starting lineup? He's questionable as of right now. Do I then go to Josh Adams, who I have on my bench from Philly, or do I bite the bullet and put Mark Ingram in? Because for me, that's the big one. Like, if I had Alvin Kamara, I feel like I would feel better or more confident or more comfortable, I would say, weathering the storm with Alvin Kamara, but also with Mark Ingram. I just don't know, because for me, it's been the games I have him on my bench, he scores 20-some points. I have him in the starting lineup, he goes for like 4 or 5. So like, for me, it's too much of a guessing game with Mark Ingram to where not only am I getting fantasy anxiety from him, I just don't know whether to trust the gut and go with him or to kind of bail on him altogether.
See, that's the thing, is I don't want to bail on him altogether because we've seen what he can do. When he's on, he is at his best. But we've seen too many games this season where he has not been at his best and where he's been just frankly outplayed by Alvin Kamara. And when he is, Kamara's going to stay on the field and Ingram's going to be off. And that's what hurts his value the most, is he's not even on the field then.
And the thing that sucks is we can't say that, like, we can't do like, oh, well, in the last game against Tampa, he did this because he was suspended for that game. So this is his first time going against Tampa this year. But what we could do is kind of see, all right, what did the Saints do last time they played the Tampa Bay Buccaneers? And last time they played Tampa, they lost 48-40. I know that doesn't matter when it comes to the fantasy box score, but you look at it, New Orleans, Alvin Kamara, I know it was week 1. He only had 29 yards on the ground. Yeah, he had 2 touchdowns on the ground. And then through the air, that's where he got most of his points. 100 yards through the air, 9 receptions, PPR, you're getting 9 extra points, and another touchdown through the air. So, like, I look at that and go, should I just say, like, you believe in the matchup, Mark Ingram, he's going to get his touches, he's going to do well? Or do I say, all right, Alvin Kamara's going to have a big game, and Mark Ingram's not?
I think that this is one of those games where players on both sides could have a big game. Your Mike Evans could have a big game. Chris Godwin could have a big game. Kamara, Ingram, Thomas. They could all Breeze. I mean, they could all have big games. That's what this type of game is usually built for. Is high scoring, lots of points. We saw it the first time. It was high scoring, lots of points. Ended up being fairly close, but Tampa Bay got the win. So this is definitely going to be a close. Could be. I don't want to say definitely, but could be a close matchup again. But definitely, I think will be a shootout.
And I mean, to me, my whole thing comes from, and you're not going to get this from the big experts, you're only going to get this from the real guy like me. I've been burned too many times by Mark Ingram to where my confidence is shook, to where it's just like, every time I play you, I get nothing. Every time I don't play you, I get everything.
So if you just keep him in there,
I get nothing.
Fine. You'll be fine.
And for our MVP personal league, I really need a big week this week, because it's basically winning you're in, because Dave and I mapped it out today because Dave was all cocky thinking, I'm just going to sit with my feet back. And I should have let him think that instead of saying, no, you got to win, because if you lose and I win, I'm in.
What about me?
Here's the thing. So how it would work is you and I would be 1-1 against each other. Dave and I would be 1-1 against each other. So if I win and Dave loses, I get in. Because since the head-to-head record's a tie, it goes to points forced. And I have the most points. Unless Dave outscores me by 30 this week, I would win the tiebreaker over both of you because I would have more points forced the entire year. If you and Dave tie, Dave has more points forced by like 200 more points than you. So Dave would get in. So the only way you're getting into the playoffs, you got to beat me and then hope that Sean beats Dave this week, since you and Dave are tied. I got to hope I beat you and Sean beats Dave. You got to win. You got to win. That's your thing, is you just got to win and focus on that and hope Sean does his job. Hope Alvin Kamara comes to play. That's what you got to hope for.
Well, my team has really been letting me down for the last about 7 weeks, I feel like, so that's going to be tough.
Joe Mixon, your running back. I know that. Odell Beckham.
Well, when you have people like Odell Beckham and Mike Evans and Andrew Luck and Joe Mixon, you would think you could win a lot more games.
Just so everyone out there knows what you're rolling with in that league, non-PPR, this is the lineup you rolled out last week. Andrew Luck at quarterback, Joe Mixon and Tevin Coleman. He had a crap game.
He's an ass.
Last week. Odell Beckham and Mike Evans as your wide receivers. Austin Hooper, he had a pretty good game for you last week. Emmanuel Sanders in your flex, the Cowboys defense, and then Steven Gostkowski, with your bench being Aaron Rodgers, Kyle Rudolph, Brandon Cooks, Deshaun Watson, Doug Martin, and Ryan Suckup.
Ain't a bad team.
You got 2 kickers. Why you got 2 kickers?
Well, because at one point I needed them. Because I didn't want to drop Gostkowski.
Yeah.
And so I picked up another one, and I think Suckup lived up to his last name and sucked.
Yeah, true.
Sucked.
But I mean, that's a whole thing. And like, even, I don't know if I'm getting too, like, jumping the gun on this. Running back in general is like, because like last week, I'll be completely honest. The only reason I won last week was the Kareem Hunt stuff, because I played Ben in our league, and he had Kareem Hunt. Kareem Hunt gets cut. He's got to sit Kareem Hunt and doesn't have him for that game. So it's like, that's another thing. If you had Kareem Hunt going into your playoffs, you got to find somebody now to try to supplement that spot in your starting lineup, because you weren't going to sit him.
The thing that has really killed me here at the end of the year is what I was bragging about at the beginning of the year. I had said, because I was doing so well at the beginning of the year, I came out hot out of the gate. I was like 3-0 or started 4-1, something like that. Clearly not anymore.
I'll fact check. I'll pull it up.
But I had picked Le'Veon Bell. I had drafted Le'Veon Bell. That was the first running back off the board, and I was so dumb. I hadn't obviously done enough homework. I just picked Le'Veon Bell.
You started out 4-1.
Yeah. Okay. Even more disappointing.
You were 4-1. Then after 8 weeks, you were 6-2. And then ever since week 8, you've been 1-4 since week 8.
Yeah, it ain't good.
I mean,
so, let me tell you. If I don't make the playoffs, someone's getting fired. Someone's getting fired.
You know, it's been the absolute worst though. So you were.
It's a running back situation. That's what's been so bad.
So you were 6-2. Then week 9, you lost 143-91. That was just a shellacking. Sean had a game against you. And then 123-79, where Ben's team just came out to play against you. And then, hey, at least you beat Mark because Mark can only beat Sean.
But it was a close game.
Yeah.
It was. At one point, I texted you and I said, I think I'm losing to Mark.
Yeah. Just so you guys know, Mark Weber in our league is 1-11-1. That's how bad his team is this year. And he just got that first win last week.
So I mean, I think it also just goes to show us what we've been talking about is running backs. Running backs are so critical, so important. And with my side, with not having Le'Veon Bell, it's been very difficult. And I've had a role with Tevin Coleman because there hasn't been much else on the waiver wire.
Let's be
and let's say even if I would have played Doug Martin, I wasn't going to win the game.
Let's be completely honest. I'm going to count on my fingers. Ready? Le'Veon Bell, Deonta Freeman, Marshawn Lynch, Jay Ajayi, Bilal Powell, Jerick McKinnon, Darius Geis, and I'll even throw in Jeremy Hill. That's at least 7 or 8 guys that would still be on fantasy teams, maybe some of them in starting lineups at this point in the year. 7 or 8 guys, especially like the first ones that I listed off, like Le'Veon and Devonta Freeman, those guys would be key guys for teams this year. And those were guys that were drafted by people this year and would be guys, especially like Le'Veon, a must start every single week.
I know. It's really incredible, you know, with how the Le'Veon situation has ended up, but also just the amount of injuries
in general
to running backs too, especially and early on. I mean, McKinnon was out even before the season.
Yep,
the regular season started,
same with Darius
and
Geis.
Darius Geis too. I mean, we didn't even get to see him because he was going to be, and I still think he will be something special for the Washington Redskins, but. You are very right in saying that is you take away some of these injuries, these guys are probably starting running backs on some of these teams and some other options out there.
Hell, even like I'm going to throw Rob Kelly, could have been a guy that contributed in Washington. Jonathan Stewart with the Giants could have contributed behind Saquon, kind of like a Mark Ingram, Alvin Kamara type of deal. Like these are all guys that have been just like IR guys to where it's like, nope, they've been out the entire year and no one has been able to use them this year. Like that is the big reason why running back, and then you take into it right now, the whole Kareem Hunt thing happens. Like I said, there are people in playoff hunts that are like either like us, one more week and like this is the last week before the playoffs, or like in our What's Your Fantasy League where it's like, all right, the playoffs started. This is week 1 of the playoffs, and I just lost my number 1 or number 2 running back. And like, it's not something where it's like, oh, he'll be back next week. No, if you have Kareem Hunt, you lost him forever. You lost him for the rest of this year because he ain't coming back this year.
Ricky, moving into kind of that Kareem Hunt situation, not focusing on Hunt, but focusing on the running back situation there now. Spencer Ware was supposed to be the guy in Kansas City at the beginning of last season. Then Kareem Hunt had his couple of good games in the preseason, and boom, Spencer Ware, who was having a really great, preseason and was going to be the guy. Hunt has his games because Ware goes down, gets hurt, and all of a sudden, here's this Kareem Hunt, and boom, he takes off. Now Spencer Ware, 14 carries, 47 yards, and a touchdown against the Oakland Raiders last weekend. Wasn't the leading rusher, it was Patrick Mahomes. Is Spencer Ware a guy that you can trust to be a dependable running back here in the fantasy football playoffs? Can you put your cards and your stock in Spencer Ware to help lead you to a fantasy football win or even a fantasy football championship?
Spencer Ware to me is not going to be, if you're looking for, he's not going to be what Kareem Hunt was. He's not going to be an RB1, RB2 type of player. But, and this is based off last week because it was the first time he's had significant carries in a game. If you're looking for a flex, I'd be confident starting him as a flex. 12.2 out of your flex last week, I'll take that. In our personal league, of course, non-PPR, I got 14 points one week from Stephon Diggs in my flex. Cool, I'll take that. He's not wide receiver one. I'm not looking for that. Spencer Ware, to me, he's going to be the top running back for the Chiefs, but he's not going to be that guy. Don't expect the 28 points. Be happy, put him in the flex, expect about 12, 13, maybe 14 points, on an average, and just be happy with that. And then try to supplement, you're going to try to Kareem Hunt with what you were getting. You're going to have to try to supplement it with 2 spots and just hope someone has a breakout game, because there's no replacing what Kareem Hunt was with any guy out there. The one, though, that I do look at that I don't think he's going to do anything, but it's interesting because he's had big play or big fantasy game pop ability in the past, is Charkandrick West, or I call him Charmander West. But he's a guy to me where they just picked him up. I don't think don't pick him up in fantasy, but he's got a past with this team. That's one I find interesting of is he going to find his way into a contributing role into these late games, and maybe not this week, but next week turns into somebody who could be pick-upable in fantasy.
And I think we've talked about him before, maybe not. Mm-hmm. Doug Martin, right now for the Oakland Raiders. Mm-hmm. Doug Martin had 18 carries last week. He wasn't the leading rusher. It was Jaylen Rashard with 6 carries for 95 yards. But Doug Martin toted the football 18 times, 61 yards. He got into the end zone, and then he added 2 catches for 6 yards. Nothing much there. But Doug Martin certainly getting the majority of those carries, getting into the end zone. Is this a guy? Because he seems to be the guy who they're going to lean with. Of course, Jaylen Rashard is there. He led in rushing yards this past week, but he usually is more of the receiving back, where Doug Martin is the true running back, first and second down.
What type of league is going to be paying dividends into that? If you're a PPR guy and Jaylen Rashard's available, because he's available in about 50, almost half of leagues in ESPN. If you're in PPR, pick up Jaylen Rashard. He's just going to be more valuable just because of the receiving option. But really, to me, it's yet again with those two, kind of like a lesser version of what we were talking about with the Saints, of both are going to be valuable. It's just how many points are you going to get out of each? Because Jaylen Rashard, you could have a game like KC where he had 13.6, but then he turns around and has a game like he did against Cleveland, 6 points. A game like he did against Baltimore, 3 points. Are you going to trust him against Pittsburgh? Are you going to trust him against Denver? Are you going to then trust him against Cincinnati? These are not defenses that are slouches. It's just going to be especially playoff the matchups, because the next time he plays the Chiefs, where he had 13.6 points, is week 17, and not many fantasy leagues go into that 17th week for fantasy football.
Now, Ricky, this is a crucial time, moving away from running backs a little bit. Of course, this is a crucial time with it being fantasy football playoffs pretty much across leagues, even if it's not in our personal league that we have together. But in your mind, looking at this week, looking at matchups, give me 2, maybe 3 players that you're looking at that you're expecting are going to go off and need to be in your lineups this week.
It's the thing that's tough about it is just where to find those. And for me, one guy that I feel like you should have in your lineup, because I'm going to have him back in mine, is Stephon Diggs. I want to say Thielen and Diggs, but of course you're going to start Adam Thielen. There's no way you're going to sit that. But like Stephon Diggs, you might be in a situation on my team where he'd be a flex. Like I have DeAndre Hopkins, I have Juju Smith, and you might be saying, well, Ricky, Juju Smith is hit or miss. He needs that touchdown to be relevant. I'm not sitting Juju. Like that's just what it is. DeAndre and Juju, unless they're injured, they're lock at wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2. I've been lucky this year for most of the year. Have not had to touch my running backs. I've had Gurley and Gordon. Have not had to touch my wide receivers. I've had DeAndre Hopkins and Juju Smith. But Stephon Diggs, he's a guy, and I'm going PPR numbers because that's what our What's Your Fantasy is in. 31.6 against the Bears, 22.9 against the Packers, plays New England, 9.9. Guess what? Seattle doesn't have Bill Belichick. Their defense ain't as good as it used to be. I know it's in Seattle. I expect this wide receiver core from the Vikings to bounce back this week. I might not be super confident in the Vikings getting the win, but I am more confident with these receivers, Diggs and Thielen, going back to what we're used to seeing them with compared to what we saw against a New England team that knows how to game plan against other teams.
Sure. No, absolutely. I mean, that's what you're always, kind of looking for and looking at. For me, a guy who took the week off last week, not on his own, I think you need to have Leonard Fournette back in your lineups this week, even though it's going against a Titans team that tough defense and usually a tough running defense to go against. I think you've got to have Leonard Fournette back in there because since he's been back healthy, he's looked really strong running the football. So I think you definitely have to get him back in your lineups this week. Another guy, he's going to be playing in that same game, Corey Davis. He's now scored touchdowns in back-to-back games. This guy may not be getting a ton of yards, but he's getting some touchdowns, and that's going to be one of the biggest things. I think that Davis could get another touchdown and find the end zone again against Jacksonville this week on Thursday Night Football. So both of those guys who I'm looking at definitely coming into this week. And another guy too, if he is playing, Mitch Trubisky.
I was going to ask you about him.
If he is going to play, that means he's either 100% or nearly 100%. He has got to be in lineups because of what he's done throughout the season. And it really hasn't mattered, the matchup. And I know a lot of people will say, well, the Bears weren't playing that good at teams. It doesn't matter. Look at what...
I'm a little nervous.
Why?
For me, it comes on two things. Is first, the Rams. And I know the Rams aren't a huge, shutdown quarterbacks, but the only quarterbacks to have huge games against them, Patrick Mahomes, Russell Wilson, Drew Brees, and Kirk Cousins. Can Mitch do the same thing that those quarterbacks can do? And then if the answer is yes, which Mitch am I going to see? Because I got him on one of my teams. Am I going to see the Mitch that I saw against Detroit, that I saw against the Jets, that I saw against New England, that I saw against Miami, that I saw against Tampa? Or am I going to see 8-point Mitch that I saw at Buffalo? Or am I going to see 14.9 Mitch that I saw against Minnesota? That's the question. Because in one of my leagues, I have the question, do I start Lamar Jackson and keep him in? Or if Mitch is healthy, go back to Trubisky and kiss some titties?
I'll be honest with you. I think it's Mitch Trubisky. I think that Mitch Trubisky has shown this year, and Matt Nagy in this Bears offense has shown that they're willing to stretch the field. They're willing to get creative, and they want to get creative. I mean, just look at the last play last week in regulation on all the trickery that ended up in Cohen's hands to throw it into the end zone to Anthony Miller.
Yeah.
Now, that is, again, wouldn't have been Trubisky necessarily.
But you might not even call that play with Trubisky.
They don't have that play if Trubisky's in there. But even with Mitch Trubisky in there, he's able to get creative. He uses his legs, and that's going to get him even more yardage and create more plays. I just think if he's in there, you have got to be playing him if you don't have the Drew Brees, if you don't have a Patrick Mahomes, if you don't have somebody like that. Mitch Trubisky is working on his way, I think, to becoming that type of quarterback. We've seen some great games from him, and he still has plenty of room to grow, but what we've seen so far is really quite outstanding. And the Rams, while yes, they have a good defense, and yes, they have Aaron Donald, and yes, they can put on a lot of pressure, I think that this Bears offensive line sometimes gets lost in how good Mitch Trubisky is, and they're really good in protecting him. This is certainly a spot where if he's playing, I'm putting him in.
What also makes my decision harder is I'm going to go ahead and say this. If you really need a quarterback this week, look at Lamar Jackson. And the reason why I say that is not only has he been serviceable and a good option, especially for me, I've needed him the last 2 weeks because I didn't have Mitch in the lineup because he's been injured. Going up against the Chiefs this week, not expecting Baltimore to win that game, but let me just run through the quarterbacks who have not scored at least 20 points in PPR against the Chiefs. And you tell me if Lamar is on their level or above their level. So the first one, he's actually not scored 20 points twice against them. I just blanked on his name. Case Keenum with the Denver Broncos. Andy Dalton. Josh Rosen. Those are the only quarterbacks. There are three of them because Case Keenum did it twice. So Case Keenum, Andy Dalton, Josh Rosen, the only quarterbacks to not score 20 points. Oh, and Baker Mayfield, he had 18.3, but he was almost there. Everyone else, Phillip Rivers, Big Ben, San Francisco, I don't even know who they had quarterback in week 3.
Garoppolo.
Was that Garoppolo week 3? 22 points for him in that one. Blake Bortles had 20. Tom Brady had 21. You have Jared Goff had 35. And this past week, Derek Carr had 24 against that Chiefs defense. This is one with, if he can take care of the football, because he's dynamic in the rushing and passing, I could see probably the best game Lamar Miller has had fantasy point-wise. Lamar Jackson. I do that all the time. Lamar Jackson could have the most points he's had in fantasy ever this year if he plays well.
I think that could be a realistic possibility. The Chiefs have not been known for their defensive prowess this year for the most part, except certainly against that in that Jacksonville game where they turned over Blake Bortles so many times.
Jacksonville has not been good, period.
No, they have not. But I think that this could be a week where Lamar Jackson, with his running ability, with his escapability there, and then also being able to spread the field a little bit more, open up that playbook for him to throw the football, that could lead to some bigger plays against the Chiefs, as they have been susceptible by a number of teams for the big plays. But who knows? I mean, maybe this would be one of those weeks where the Chiefs kind of come up and give him some troubles, especially being a younger quarterback in the league.
And that's where the decision-making comes in, because he hasn't been one to avoid turnovers yet. So he has been a little turnover-prone, which is probably his biggest negative as of right now.
Ricky, my final question to you. A.J. Green is out and done for the season.
Dave said he was sorry earlier on the onside kick.
Well, he should be. Should be sorry for a lot of these players. A.J. Green
we went through the list.
is down and out. Where do you go from there? Where do you go from there? Where are you turning to? This is my final question. Where are you turning to? Because A.J. Green is a guy in one of my personal leagues that I traded for a couple of weeks ago. I traded Kerryon Johnson and Phillip Lindsay to get A.J. Green. When he was hurt, looking for the playoffs, I was able to play A.J. Green 1 week. It was this past week. He got 1 point. I lost.
Oh, man.
Thank God that wasn't the playoffs. The playoffs starts this week. But basically now it's A.J. Green is done. I don't have him at all. I've got to go with somebody else, and now I've got to kind of re-game plan because I was planning on having him. As many other people probably were doing the same. So if you're talking to them, where should they turn?
So I got two guys. Number one, and these are both guys that are owned in about 50% of leagues. Cortland Sutton.
Yep,
and
I like him.
The reason why I say that is going up against San Fran, 22nd against wide receivers this year. He had 18.5 last week against Cincy. I expect him to have a similar type game this past week. And here's one that's got an asterisk to it. Taylor Gabriel. If Mitch starts. If Mitch starts, I would think about playing Taylor Gabriel because it was a weird happenstance where Thanksgiving, Taylor Gabriel had 7 receptions, had 11.9 points. This past week, only had 3, had 2.7 points. So it was like, what was going on? Chase Daniels is not the normal quarterback. That's what was going on. Plus that New York game, the Bears did not look good for most of it. And I look at the games with Mitch, not all of them have been that 11, but like look at Minnesota, 7 receptions. Then in the Detroit game, he had 7 receptions. Taylor Gabriel in this one, if the Rams lock down other receivers for the Bears, he could be left open, and if Mitch is there, Mitch will find him, and I think that Taylor Gabriel has a bounce-back game. However, another one that you got to look at, and this is boom or bust because in the last few games he's only had like 3 receptions, but Anthony Miller for the Bears could be a boom type of prospect where you're sitting there going, you know what, screw it, AJ Green is out. I'm going to go with Anthony Miller because I'm expecting him to play like he did the first game against Detroit where he had like 122 yards and a touchdown in that one on only 5 receptions. So if Mitch is in, maybe you look more to these Bear receivers than you would if Chase Daniels is the quarterback.
Ricky, any final thoughts, any final comments to our viewers going into the start of the fantasy football playoffs for some, or going into a final week for others, or continuing on in the playoffs for even others? Any final thoughts or comments?
I got a question for our viewers.
Sure.
Because in my personal team, and I'm not going to ask you because I'm playing you and you're just going to tell me to pick up the wrong one. Tell me which defense to pick up because I'm not playing the Packers again this week. I thought they'd be better than they were. Here are all the available defenses. You just tell me who to pick up in the comment section. Titans, Bills, Chiefs, Lions, Chargers, Giants, Jets, Panthers, Steelers, Texans, Browns, Jags, Eagles, Patriots, Colts, Broncos, Dolphins, Falcons, 49ers, Bengals, Raiders, Bucks. Sorry, I listed those off kind of fast.
I think you should really pick up that Bengals defense. They've been doing really well.
Yeah, Bengals defense going up against the Chargers. The 2 that I'm thinking are either Titans against the Jaguars or Browns against the Panthers because the Panthers are diddly poo on the road. But let me know which defense you would pick up because I need a defense this week. Ever since the Browns decided, who was my original defense? I'd have to look that up in our legacy doc. I know I was riding the Browns for a while before they fired Hugh and their defense kind of went to crap. But yeah, that's my biggest predicament this week is what defense am I going to pick up?
Well, there you have it. There you have it. That's Ricky's closing thoughts. And thank you so much for tuning in again. Let us know what you thought of the show. Let us know what you liked. Let us know what you disliked. Let us know what your thoughts are on the fantasy football playoffs and how you're looking, and what other questions you might have. If there's a starter sit that you're looking at, who should you start? Who should you sit? Send it over to us as well.
What
Ricky.
defense I started with? The Eagles. The Eagles were the defense because
made sense.
Because here's how it went. Because we have the chaos draft.
Yeah.
In the defense round, I picked the Eagles. Sean picked the Rams. Mike 1 picked the Jags. Mike 2 picked the Vikings. You picked the Chargers. Ben picked the Ravens. Then Dave picked the Bears. Mark picked the Saints. Yeah, and that Eagle team, I had to drop them right away because they were not good at all. But yeah, that was the defense I started with because I was like, I knew I started with a bad defense this year. I thought they were going to be better than they were. I really did.
So did they. So to wrap things up, again, if you want to support this podcast or other podcasts, head over to patreon.com, become a patron for just $1 a month or $10 a month, and you can come on a podcast and talk whatever you would like. Also, head over to mostvaluablepodcast.com. You can get an MVP t-shirt there. And then finally, head over to iTunes and give us that 5-star rating if you so choose and believe that we are deserving. Again, head over to iTunes. And thank you so much again for watching and listening. We appreciate it. We love it. We love doing this. And we hope that you enjoy and love it as much as we do. Certainly excited and happy to be interactive with you in the comments section on, again, people that you think you should start, people you think you should sit, any other questions or comments that you have, because this is getting to be the time where if I'm not playing you, I am ready to help you. So it's definitely one of those. Ricky and I love doing it. And like I said, we hope that you enjoy watching as well. So that is going to do it for us. For Ricky Widmer, I'm Brandon Swanson saying so long until next time, and enjoy Week 14 in the NFL.